Do that real quick. So we are going to start with a quick warm-up exercise just to get us going. I'll go through some intro content just on background around BGS, who we are, why we're running this workshop. Go through some overview content about the MassCEC EmPower grant program, which is what we're here to talk about today. Cover what it is and why you might want to consider applying. And then we have two exercises just to kind of get more into conversation around how you might connect this grant opportunity to the work that you're already doing at your organizations, and start to prepare some of the initial kinds of questions and information you might need to put together an application. And then we'll wrap up with some resources. Since we are a smaller group today, I have a feeling we're going to get through things a little quicker than planned, which will be great to get us wrapped up before 5. But to start us out, I did just want to kind of open it up and hear from folks who are here today, kind of one thing you're hoping to learn from today's workshop. If you just want to unmute or share it, if it's easier, you can throw it in the chat. We can start there.
Great. All right. Well, I can go ahead. So I'm familiar with, well, big fan of MassCEC for sure, and familiar with the EmPower grant, at least from the RFP, and am looking to just learn more information about some of the specific things that might be helpful for the application and the best way to structure that grant as we, finish up our application. We're already doing some work around, energy coaches or energy ambassadors, and so I think that would be a great way for us. This grant would be a great way for us to scale up that program, and there's a lot of interest with some of our community partners on that program already. So just excited that this is an opportunity that's available. I'm excited to learn more.
And Sharon, if you want to throw it in the chat or unmute. I don't want to keep pressuring you to unmute if your audio is not working. I don't know, Alicia, if you have anything you're hoping to learn today.
I am hoping to learn about the questions, similar to what Lisa said, like what are the questions that people have, the organizations have about getting into this sector and finding funding to support initiatives. So that's what I'm hoping to learn.
Well, thank you both for being active participants in today's workshop. So I'll just give a little background before we jump into things on Browning the Green Space and why we're doing this work. As you all, I'm sure, very aware, there's overwhelming economic and social inequities for Black and Brown communities across the nation, but also particularly in Boston. We can see here the racial wealth gap between white households and Black households is pretty staggering. At the same time, there's an immense amount of economic opportunity presented by the solutions that we know we need to deploy in order to tackle climate change. So a huge number of clean energy workers we need in the workforce to meet our goals, as well as 3 million housing units that need at least some level of retrofit over the next 30 years. So a lot of work that needs to get done, which in and of itself represents a lot of economic opportunity for folks to get involved. And so at BGS, we're working at the intersection of these complex challenges. We know that there isn't a lasting solution to climate change without tackling climate justice. And so we're working at the intersection of environmental justice, economic, and social justice to be able to tackle these challenges. Our vision is for a just energy transition, and our mission is threefold: to create jobs, build wealth, and reduce energy burden for Black and Brown communities. And we're doing this through our 5 areas of programmatic focus. So we have our careers, companies, capital, contracts, and communities. And as a part of our communities work, we've been kind of playing this informal role in the ecosystem of connecting community organizations with partners to be able to tap into state and federal funding opportunities in order to support that increased deployment of community-led clean energy solutions. And so we've been exploring over the past year is how do we kind of more formalize that role into a service offering or a way that we can more tangibly support community-based organizations in accessing things like the MassCEC programs. And so last year, we actually applied for a MassCEC EmPower grant. So it's a little cycle of EmPower here supporting this work. to be able to develop what we're currently calling the Community Connector Initiative. And through this program, what we're hoping to do is develop a series of support services to really advance diverse and innovative teams in securing clean energy grant funding. And for this first kind of pilot of the program that we're running this year, our focus is on the EmPower grant program in particular as a way to help folks get their kind of first foot in the door in terms of tapping into funding with MassCEC and in sort of the clean energy landscape in Massachusetts. And so I'm going to give a super high-level overview of the opportunity, but definitely dig into the RFP. And we're lucky to have Lisa right here if there are more detailed questions about the program. And there's also a really great overview webinar already available on the MassCEC's website that really gets into the details of everything. The main thing to know about the EmPower grant program is that there are two grant tracks. There's the innovation and capacity building grants, and then the implementation grants. And for today's workshop, we're going to be really focused on preparing for the innovation and capacity building grant as kind of a starting point for organizations that are new to clean energy or new to applying to MassCEC grants, and as a way to kind of get that initial foot in the door. And so the overarching goal of the MassCEC EmPower grant program is to provide access to the benefits of clean energy to previously underserved populations in Massachusetts. And so through this program, MassCEC is hoping to achieve this direct investment in communities and community-based organizations, and also crowdsource solutions for different types of program models and projects. The innovation and capacity building grants provide $5,000 to $25,000 of seed funding to be able to really explore ideas for potential programs and projects. So it's really meant to kind of help you go through that ideation phase and exploratory work to understand where you might kind of align your current work with a clean energy program or project. And the applications for deadline for both of these grants is April 3rd. So it's coming up at the beginning of next month. And welcome, Sedley. We're just going over the overview information about the EmPower grant program. So thanks for joining today. So in order to apply for the program, you need to fall in one of the following categories in order to be eligible. It can be a community-based organization, a federally recognized and state-acknowledged tribe, a nonprofit, an individual, a municipality, or a for-profit. Two special kind of considerations for eligibility for this program is that applicants must have a demonstrated history of working or living within or engaging with at least one of the program's priority groups. And for the purposes of this grant funding, that's defined as environmental justice populations, renters, and communities disproportionately impacted by environmental hazards. Applicants can also kind of define their own priority groups based on the populations that they're serving through their work. That just needs to be done in collaboration with MassCEC staff in advance of submitting your application. The other piece to keep in mind if you are coming from a municipality or a for-profit organization is that you must partner with a community-based organization in order to be eligible to apply for the grant program.
From my flash drive. Okay. So
so that's the eligibility criteria. So why consider applying for innovation and capacity building with MassCEC? I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's a super approachable and flexible opportunity to be able to receive funding to do some of that initial exploratory work to understand how to connect your current portfolio of initiatives at your organization or your company and connect it into clean energy benefits and outcomes in an innovative way. You can also use this funding to support your staff time on applying for other funding opportunities, so developing a grant application to unlock more transformative funding for your organization, whether that's a grant opportunity through MassCEC, other state entities, or at the federal level. So this is the type of funding opportunity where you could kind of use it to support your own organization's capacity building in order to move forward a broader initiative within your community. The other piece I wanted to touch on just before we get into the discussion is just For folks who are newer to state funding opportunity, just give a little bit of a sense of what the process looks like once you receive funding from MassCEC. And this is very much just based on BGS experience with funding and subject to change as the program evolves. But generally, once you've received notice of the award, you'll go through a contracting phase with MassCEC. And a template of that contract is available on the grant website, so you can get familiar with the terms in advance of applying for the funding. And typically, within that contract is when you kind of decide how funding will be distributed over the grant term and what specific deliverables will be associated with those funding delivery points. What's really great about the EmPower grant program is that during the grant period, you're also going to be connected in with this broader community of EmPower grantees through virtual and in-person convenings where you can connect with other folks who are encountering similar challenges, implementing similar programs to yours, and have that opportunity to learn from peers within that broader grant community. There also is some periodic reporting tied to the grant funding that you receive from MassCEC. For an innovation and capacity building grant, since those are smaller grants, typically you might have like an interim report and then a final report, and the details of that and what's required to be in those reports will be determined during that contracting phase, where you're kind of putting together the details of what your project will look like. But it's good to know ahead of time some of the time commitment associated with administration of the grant. But again, it's pretty light for the innovation and capacity building grants. And the last piece I just wanted to wrap up with is a couple of different examples of innovation and capacity building grants that are currently underway, just to give folks a sense of like how you can use this funding. There's a lot of different ways that you could use it. So the Arts Extension Institute is one example of how a single partner is using seed funding through the innovation capacity building grant funding to support staff time of a bunch of different partner organizations to be able to participate in a planning process that they're running that will be looking at how they can integrate clean energy interventions across their existing portfolio of work going forward. So thinking about all the work that they're already doing and how clean energy can layer over that. MVS Welding is using their funding to do some work to better understand the stakeholders and community resources that are out there in order to be able to develop a specific business offering within the offshore wind industry. So this is helping them do some of that initial exploratory work to be able to move into a different kind of business space for their company. The Commonwealth Green Low-Income Housing Coalition is using funding through this program to design and pilot education and outreach materials for their existing constituents. So again, thinking about who are you already serving at your organization and how might you be able to use this funding to help you bring clean energy opportunities to those audiences. The last example is the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts. They're using this funding to conduct some community engagement and research to get a better understanding of local interest in air source heat pumps, and then also explore grant writing opportunities to be able to scale up the work that they're looking to do in that space. So as you can see, there's kind of a lot of different ways that you can use this. And a lot of these instances are thinking about what is the work that these organizations are already doing or doing well that could potentially bring clean energy opportunities through those channels to have a greater impact on the communities they're already serving. So that's my quick overview. If folks have any questions, I'm happy to pause here and just see if anything's come up so far that you want to dig into.
No one else has a question. I will have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Leisha.
So this actually came up because I had a call with More Than Words, which is a youth development training organization connected to like a social enterprise with their bookstore, not at all connected to clean energy whatsoever, but they are interested in creating pathways to employment for their young adults that they work with, and are interested to know what are those clean energy opportunities and what are the programs their students could be connected to, or just to be more well-informed about this industry and how to get interested students access to it. So I was suggesting that their development team look into MassCEC funding to figure out what that could look like. And so now I'm at this workshop that you pulled together brilliantly, Meg. And so I'm putting on my, like, if I was more than words, they could have come to this workshop and heard about this particular grant opportunity to help them explore how their workforce development program could help provide access to the young people to take a step into this and whatever that looks like for them. So I'm just going to be sharing that back with my contact over there. That sound like the right kind of, does that sound like a project that could fall into the EmPower grant program?
Yeah, I definitely think that could fall into it. And something that came up on Tuesday when we had our other workshop, folks had questions around like, at what stage do we need to like be engaging partners? Do we need to have our partners all lined up? And I think the example, Alicia, that you're bringing up, more than words, may want, a partner who's familiar with clean energy career pathways to bring them in. And for innovation capacity building grants, it's good to have a sense of who you might want to engage. And if you do already have a partner on the table, that's great to bring into the application. But you don't need to have everything lined up and figured out for the application, unless, of course, the caveat, if you're a municipality or a for-profit entity, you do need to have that community-based partner on board in order to be eligible.
Excellent, thank you.
And Lisa is affirming that is a great example of of a potential application. Cool. Well, that's all for kind of the formal presentation material. So for the first kind of conversation that I wanted to have with folks today was really to dig into connecting the work that you're already doing into clean energy. And so what I pulled out to kind of just get our thoughts going on this is some of the possible activity areas that are in the grant opportunity. But you can really think of these separate from whether or not they're explicitly clean energy related activities. So are you already doing direct outreach and engagement with some of the priority groups that are targeted through this funding? Do you do support services that help folks navigate state or federal incentives or funding? Are you doing engagement with landlords, delivery of innovative financing models? Does some of your work support local public health outcomes? Do you do job training and community education, emergency response or community resilience, or language access services? And then there's also just this broad category of other things that people are doing that could tie into clean energy outcomes or benefits for the community. And so there's just a lot of space within the way that this particular RFP is framed for you to put forth what you're interested in doing to really tie in those clean energy benefits for folks that you're working with. So when we're talking about clean energy benefits, just to frame the conversation, you can think about this through technology areas. So thinking about energy efficiency, weatherization, heat pumps, solar hot water, rooftop PV, community shared solar, energy storage, and electric vehicles, just to kind of put the whole landscape out there of what kind of benefits you might be thinking about delivering. And this doesn't just mean like the installation of each of those technologies in terms of the benefit. It could be supporting someone in accessing a job that is within the energy efficiency sector. And even on Tuesday, we were talking about like how close to the actual delivery of a measure does a project need to be to fall under this program. There was someone on that workshop that works a lot with youth and kind of supporting them in advocacy efforts, and that work doesn't necessarily lead to the installation of a heat pump in a home, but that broader kind of engagement and awareness activities with young people is really important to getting them engaged in the kind of work and impact that we want to have in this space. So just to kind of put all those pieces out there. So I'm going to turn it over to you all and open it with some questions for conversation. So one, would just love to hear from folks. What are you working on? Like, what's your mission in this space? What kind of projects and initiatives do you have going on? And then kind of digging into how do you feel like this lines up with clean energy and climate, and kind of have an open conversation around how you feel like you might fit into this grant opportunity.
A couple questions in the chat also, Meg.
Yes. All right. So question from Sharon on, is there any requirement around a company's revenue? I don't think there is, but don't, I would take a close look at the RFP guidelines, especially if you're a for-profit company, and just make sure there's no special considerations. I don't know if Lisa wants to jump in on that question in particular.
Yeah, happy to help on that one. I know that one's very specific. There isn't any requirement on revenue. The only thing that, I guess one might see in like as a clause in a standard legal terms and conditions is that you affirm that you're an organization in good standing. We don't actually really even ask folks to confirm that directly, but that's like an agreement that you could see as a standard legal term and condition, but nothing specific like that, where we would dig into that.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. And I just threw the link in the chat to the grant webpage where you can download the RFP and also access that over video. And at the end of this too, we'll share a bunch of links to some of the resources that will help you with developing your application. So Leah, on your question around securing space for clean energy training, I believe there are some limitations in the RFP around use of funds for capital costs directly. But maybe Lisa, you want to touch on that piece a little bit too?
Yeah, I mean, there we do have in an implementation grant, we do have a 25% cap on capital costs, but securing space probably wouldn't be considered a capital cost, depending on what that looked like. So at least at face value, from what I hear, that would feasibly be an eligible use of funding.
Some questions. Yeah, so I'll take the slides down so we can have more of a conversation about these questions. So maybe just starting with, tell me a little bit about your organization or your company. What's your mission, and what are some of the programs and initiatives that you're focused on right now? Hassan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I was gonna say I can just go ahead.
Thanks.
Just have everyone sit in this awkward silence otherwise. All right, so so my organization, we're the Boston Climate Action Network, and so we organize residents around local climate policy, but increasingly we're also looking at state level policy. And I think relevant to this, I mean, usually we're doing a lot of different policy advocacy campaigns and community education, but we see a real opportunity with the MassSAVE program, because anyone who's gone through this program knows it can fund a lot of really great repairs. It's also pretty complicated to run through the entire process. And we know anecdotally that low-income communities, environmental justice communities are just not getting the same access to that because of so many of these barriers that are put up. And in some cases, because folks in those communities just may not know about the program. So we've been undergoing this very large-scale project, partially to educate folks about the program, partially to collect data about what the barriers are, partially to advocate for reform to the program. But I think what's really exciting about this is that we've partnered with community-based organizations in all of Boston's environmental justice communities to help educate their both renters and landlords in their neighborhoods. And so, it started by doing workshops and focus groups, but we're now starting to put together this pilot program for what we call MassSAVE navigators, but very much kind of like an energy coach or ambassador, who can help the residents walk through all the different aspects. And because those folks are housed within these different community groups, they can really be reflective of the community and meet the community's needs, whether it be, language needs or being physically in the same neighborhood as that person. And we have just a small amount of funding to set up this pilot, which is why we're interested in MassCEC to actually make sure that we can allocate sufficient staff time to that. So looking with greater interest, I think, at the implementation grant aspect of this, but
Awesome.
Really
Yeah, I was
appreciate
gonna
all the-
say, it sounds like you guys are at the implementation stage with your concept. That's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're up to, among other things.
Awesome. Sedley or Sharon, anything that you want to add in terms of what you're working on right now? I know Sedley, you're on 2 devices, so if you're able to.
Oh yeah, let me focus on one here. I was on the
Awesome.
phone
There we go.
initially, but now I'm at the computer. So okay, so yeah, I through BGS I think was maybe a year before last. I started my initiative would be to support solar industry but from the perspective of developers who are doing solar farms, right? I mean, I started out with a lot of things in mind, but then kind of doing more research and learning more about the industry. I don't have a background in the industry, so as I learn, I've kind of more customized my thoughts around my experience and what's needed in the market. So I do a whole kind of business plan, not a marketing plan yet, but through the BGS program, we went through maybe like, I don't remember how many weeks, maybe 6 weeks of training or 8 weeks we did. And my business then basically will be to support developers of solar farms who are putting in, large scale farms. So I want to consult from the point of view of, finding the land, the clearing of the land, preparing the ground, the infrastructure, because my background is, more runs along that line. So I have my website up, and also I took one training recently now with an established organization. They install rooftop solar, but a part of what I want to do is gonna be the workforce development, right? So after taking this organization will help me start, right? I would partner with them to get going, to get my experience in the solar industry. So a part of that will be to train people as well. So the next thing is to find a space. Then I would that organization would sponsor me to get going, and then I will launch my initiative there. So basically, I'm looking for developers who are doing solar farms right now, so I can consult and learn the business that way, and I can support the industry from that perspective. So that's, in a nutshell, a little piece of what I plan to do.
Awesome. Thanks, Sedley.
Yes. And in fact, I'm going to a solar conference in Chicago in July. Yeah, I was so then that's the plan, to meet developers and people are doing great things in solar. So a little bit of snapshot.
Great, and thanks, Sharon, for throwing your background in the chat. Sounds like Sharon's from a energy storage startup in Chelmsford. Cool. And Sedley, are you looking at particular geographies of Massachusetts that you're focused on for your project work, where you want to do that training?
Yes, I think it's easiest to start in my neighborhoods or surrounding neighborhoods. I live in Southeast Mass, so south of Boston, and Brockton, Stoughton, anywhere in that area. I mean, if the opportunity pops up to do something, elsewhere initially to get started, of course, but ideally that's where I'm looking at. South of Boston.
Cool. Well, I'll jump us into the next part of the conversation. That's kind of getting into just now, which is really kind of the 2 other key questions that you'll want to have answered for innovation and capacity building grant, which is, who are you trying to serve through your program, and who else do you want to be on your team in terms of partnerships? So I think for the most part, folks talked about this, but just kind of getting a better sense of who the audience is for the work that you're doing in this space. Who you currently serve through your programs, and are there any like new audiences that you're looking to try to reach that might line up with the priority grant groups through the grant opportunity? And then the last piece is around building your team. So what partners do you need to be able to either reach those audiences or be able to add that clean energy component to the work that you're doing and try out a new approach? So maybe just for a couple minutes, I'll pause here and see if Sedley, Hassan, or Sharon, if there are particular, partners that you're looking to connect with in this space to advance the work that you're looking to move forward through the grant application.
What was that, a question? Or-
Yeah, just if there are any particular partners or other types of organizations or even capacity building partners like folks who provide professional services or other types of connections that would be helpful for your work.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I was trying to
No, no worries.
disconnected over there. So there are training facilities like, sometimes community colleges offer, introductory classes and stuff. So maybe I could partner with an organization that already does training and just to get started to introduce, that clean energy portion. And that will be a great way. Apart from what I mentioned earlier, like, people doing community solar, there are companies that are doing, community solar, where they're installing solar panels in a park, in a parking lot or on brown fields, or landfills. Those are good people to connect with. So from my point of view, those are some of the people I would love to connect with.
Yeah.
I'd say for me, the folks, beyond folks that we've already connected with, I think we would envision hiring at least one or a few new folks from this. And so any providers with job training or workforce development experience that can help us really put together a robust training program for our new team members would be fantastic.
Awesome. Cool. And seeing Sharon's response in the chat. Awesome. Yeah, so I think of those questions kind of to help folks think through like the innovation capacity building grant. It's really thinking about what is it that you want to explore, who are you trying to serve, and then who are you going to partner with. And there's a ton of great resources already available through the MassCEC team to help you navigate both the innovation capacity building and the implementation side of the program. So I'm just going to wrap up with those. So some resources that are available is the overview video that goes into the details of both of the different tracks. There's also some upcoming office hours that I definitely encourage folks to attend, where either Lisa or other folks from her team will be available to answer any questions that you have as you're developing your application. So there's one on the 18th and one on the 25th. And then following up to the workshops that we're facilitating this week, BGS is going to be developing a teaming database to help you connect with other folks to support your potential applications to the program. So if you are looking for particular partners, we're hoping that will be a place where you can connect with people for this grant opportunity, but also in the future, as well as we continue to expand the work that we do through the Community Connector Initiative. And then the last piece, I would love your feedback on today's workshop. So if you can take a minute or two just to fill out the short feedback form that Alicia's going to drop in the chat, that would be really appreciated. And again, really appreciate folks hopping on today to join the conversation. And I'll stay on. We do have a couple more minutes left to spare if folks have any particular questions or things that you want to chat about.
Great, thank you. I had a few questions I guess more on the implementation grant, but perhaps that's the same for the innovation grant, which is this like a 1-year grant period, or is there any clearly defined grant period?
That is a good question. So I know the innovation and capacity building grants are designed to be implemented fairly quickly. They're like 18 months or 2 years. And then for the implementation grants, I haven't taken as close of a look at the specifics for that. I believe it is a 2-year period. If Lisa is still there, I might ask her to jump in on that question.
Yeah, I think you captured it well. Capacity building is designed to be used a little bit more quickly. Implementation assumes a little bit of a longer project. It's not to say that implementation funding couldn't go quicker. I guess the technical things that would happen, again, contractually, if somebody were to get an award, that we do a 2-year term on the ICB grant, innovation capacity building, and a 3-year term on the other ones, on the implementation. So it's not necessarily that your program has to last that long, but just those, we kind of give the space that it could run that long.
I see. Got it. So if we were to run it in like a year or 2 years, could we then reapply for the grant at the end of our time doing that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And is the funding dispersed in like one lump sum amount, like right at the beginning, or is it like dispersed throughout the cycle?
We do milestone-based contracts, so they're designed to kind of give you some upfront funds to sort of meet your needs initially, and then sort of periodic funding over time as you make progress, again, based on the total value and also the length of time that your project is.
Got it. All right, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Awesome. Anyone else have questions before we wrap up? All right, seeing none, I think we can wind down a little bit before 5, but thank you guys for joining. It's really good to have you all here today, and hopefully it was helpful. And feel free to reach out to me after this too if you have any questions or thoughts on other resources that we can make available.
Are the slides recorded? This is my last question.
Yes, I did record it, and I will.
All right.
So early next week, you'll get an email from me with the recording and the slides.
All right, very good. All right, thank you so much for your time,
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
everyone. Night.